Hello and welcome to the Justin Hamilton podcast. We are going to be returning to one of our regular segments that we haven't had for a while, which was Space Podyssey. Originally, that was a segment that I used to host with my good pal Ben Elwood, who I am keen to get back onto the show at some point. But today we have Alex Hammond, the author who has appeared on this podcast numerous times. You may have read his books, The Berlin Trader and The Paris Collaborator, and he has a third one coming out soon, which is The Moscow Defector. And I'm very much looking forward to that novel in this trilogy. I've really loved the first two, and so that's coming out soon. But to get him back on the show, we've been talking about Blade Runner and the differences between the original book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and the original version of the film, the one that has the much derided narration, etc. That was a film that I saw at the cinema, and so it holds a special place in my rankings for me. I know that the versions without the narration are better. Uh, but it's hard to discount your first love. Do you know what I mean? So, reading the book as a kid was like it took me a couple of goes. You'll hear us discuss that when we get into the book and the movie differences. But anyway, Alex and I have been wanting to discuss this for a while, and with his new novel coming out, I thought, well, why don't we get into this? I'm also going to be trying to do more filming of the podcast. A lot of you have been asking for to be able to watch this sweet face. Or maybe it's because when you look in the background, you're trying to work out what are those DVDs and what are those Blu-rays and why does he have so many Batman figurines? All presents. I got to tell you, they were all presents, including the David Bowie poster there, which was a signed poster, bought for me by one Will Anderson at an auction. So, uh, yes, sometimes I think people just want to have a look at what is going on in the background. And that's fair enough as well. So, for more episodes like this, I will film these so you can check them out on the YouTube page, which I am slowly getting around to building on top of everything else. While I think of it, over at Patreon, apart from the different tiers that you can sign up for, there is also a live show. That's right, I filmed my stand-up show, Little Victories, earlier this year at the Rhino Room in Adelaide. If you're already a Patreon subscriber, you can access that. But if you are not a Patreon subscriber for a small fee, the smallest fee that I could make it on Patreon, because they do have limits, you can buy that and check it out. But as I said, if you're already a subscriber, you'll get access to that, to other live shows, to bonus podcasts, and all the money there essentially, actually not essentially, literally gets put back into the production of this very podcast that you're listening to or watching right now. Okay, let's bring in Alex, and I hope you enjoy this chat about the seminal and still my favorite Blade Runner. One of the interesting things about going back and watching the original cut of this film from 1982, the one that I saw at the cinema, and then going back through the book. I don't know if this is something that you're aware of or something that you'd even agree with, but your character in your latest trilogy, Auguste Duchesne, is that how you pronounce it?
That's how I say it.
Yeah. He gets hurt. I feel that character in the first two books. I feel that character is, I can feel his aches. I can feel him when he's just standing up. I can feel him, moving around Berlin and places like that. And it's interesting. Rick Deckard is someone who I don't think there's maybe the opening scene when he's just getting some food is about the only scene where he doesn't seem to be aching and creaking and falling apart. Is that something that appeals to you in your protagonists, that the things that you watch and read, and that's why you write about characters like that?
I think it's partly to do with I guess the noir setting, right?
Yeah,
Because that's for me was one of the things I love about Blade Runner is it is a very much a neo-noir setting. It's very much of that, you know, 20s, 30s era,
yeah,
40s, as well. And that's so when I was writing a book set in a similar time period, it's a bit hard not to want to have your characters walking around in trench coats and
yeah,
chain smoking and being beaten up the whole time. I mean, that's kind of part of the genre. So,
yeah,
yeah, and then of course in Duchenne's case, he's an older gentleman by this point, so that was me just sort of channeling aging and my own anxieties into the
yeah,
character.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's definitely thematic connections. I think it's noir. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It was, because we were doing this podcast, I was thinking about the stuff that you've written, etc., and I was just like, oh yeah, okay, I can see the family tree of where these guys might fit in some place, which I think is, um, when you're playing around with genre, I feel like that means you're nailing it.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, yeah. Um, the other great one that I think, and we're obviously here to talk about Blade Runner, but is Miller's Crossing.
Oh yes.
Gabriel Byrne goes through the ringer in that one. He's
Yes.
constantly being beaten up by everybody.
Oh my Lord. If you want to do a Miller's Crossing podcast, lock me in.
Done.
I think that's my favorite Coen Brothers film after all these years. It's the one that I keep coming back to and just still feel the same way that I felt when I saw it at the cinema.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
So I'm curious with the original Blade Runner and Philip K Dick's book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I'm guessing you saw the movie first and then read the book?
Yes, yes. Like I think probably many people did, right? I think it would have been a rare category of person who would have gone book followed by film.
Yeah.
And if they did, they were probably in for a nasty surprise. I mean, you're in for a surprise either way, whichever order you do it in.
Yes.
But yes, unlike you, I was not fortunate. I saw Blade Runner first on a VHS.
Right.
Yeah, yes, because it was I was dead keen about Harrison Ford as an actor. I'd seen him as he was, obviously he was Han Solo, he was
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, and then what's this other film? There was this guy called Rick Deckard,
Yeah.
but that was kept. I was not allowed to watch Blade Runner until I was of a certain age, obviously because the violence in it's somewhat another level up. But yeah, um, saw the film, tried to read the book twice, failed, and then only in the last few years managed to actually make myself get through it. Not to say it's a terrible book, but it's very much of its time. It's a real classic 60s science fiction, uh, almost sterile in the way that the characters come across. There's almost an arm's lengthness between you and the character and what they're
Yeah.
experiencing, I find, which it makes it challenging for me in some ways.
I was exactly the same. Like, so I must have been, I reckon I was 10 when I saw Blade Runner. And so then immediately bought the book, and the book had the one of the great, you know, Blade Runner posters, and underneath it said, originally Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then tried to read it and was like, what is happening? Like, because the only books that I'd ever read based on movies were novelizations. So,
Yes,
like, if you read, is it Alan Dean Foster's Star Wars? It's an expansion of Star Wars,
right.
not something completely different. And
Yeah, yeah.
it took me a couple of goes. And also, I find Philip K. Dick, I've read some of his stuff, and I kind of find the ideas of his books
Mm.
more interesting than his writing, which I find to be a little bit dry. And I think you know
Yes.
the story about how he had all these alimonies, so he was trying to pay them all off at the same time, and so you got paid by the amount of words that you churned out, and then he's taking all of these drugs to stay awake, and that's why so many of his books around this period are. What does it mean to be human? Am I alive? Am I the person that I think I am? Because he
Yes.
barely
Yes. It was
sleeps.
It's a good point too. And I think to your point about the ideas and them being, that's why so many I think have been turned into adapted into films, or
Yeah,
they're not mapped like for like, right? So the ideas are strong in them, and that's why they're interesting to filmmakers. I think the other classic being the short story, we can remember it for you wholesale, which was
yes,
then Total Recall.
yes,
Um, and it's something I think is worth touching on later on when we're chatting about it. But as a comparison point between that and Blade Runner. But yeah, I think he has great ideas, and that whole paranoia thing is
yeah,
is laced throughout all of his writing.
yeah,
That all those questions, those deep questions about what it means to be human, or what life, what it means to live and experience, and is this real or not?
yeah. That's the fascinating book, A Scanner Darkly, where he's what is he? He's an undercover narc who's asked to go and spy on himself.
Yeah, and I haven't read that. I've only seen it. It's a Linklater, right? I think it was a
Yeah,
Linklater film. Yeah, yeah. Which had that amazing casting where they sort of Robert Downey Jr. was like the tweaker who was talking a million mile an hour, and then Keanu Reeves was like the stoner. No,
yeah.
no, he was the one who was having psychedelic experiences, and somebody else. I want to say Woody Harrelson, but I'm sure it wasn't.
I
Was
think it
the
was.
stoner? Was
Yeah.
the stoner? And almost like they cast the actors on the basis of the sort of the drug experiences the characters in the films were having, are sort of was closely associated with the kind of actors.
I know that's such a riveting film. That's also just before Downey Jr. really makes the
Yeah,
comeback full,
yeah,
and he's still
yeah,
making weird and interesting choices.
yes.
So would you like to, for people who haven't read the book, would you like to talk through what actually happens in the original novel? We can
Well, I
kind of,
think I think it's a I think for me it's when looking at it with Blade Runner, very little of it sort of maps across.
yeah,
Broadly, the theme and the idea is the same, which is essentially this person, in the case of the book, a bounty hunter, in the case of the film, a cop, hunting down. In the book, they're androids; in the film, they're replicants. So that
yeah,
basically that's their job. That's what it does. But I think the key difference too in the film, that in the book to the film, is that it is also told through the perspective of the JF Sebastian character,
yeah,
who's called JS Isidore in this, and they're also a key point of view character. So it's balanced between them and Deckard.
yeah,
So the Deckard story is very much a sort of him hunting down the androids, in the case of that. Whereas and that's similar. And then the JF Sebastian Isidore character discovers some replicants in his building. Again, not dissimilar to the film.
yeah,
Um, and that's really where they're the same. And then the point after that is where they differentiate. So that the book is more exploring broader concerns around empathy, is the other summary view I'd give on it. So there's without going sort of start to finish, there's this thing called mercerism in it, which is what humans use to through a box that they use to experience this person called Mercer, and they're climbing up a hill, and it's very esoteric, and they're having rocks thrown at them, and it's how they realize their empathy with other humanity.
yeah,
Um, and so this empathy, so the Voight-Kampff machine, famously in the film, which tests empathy, is part of that same theme throughout of of empathy is a differential between what humans have and androids. And of course, as Deckard's going through, he starts to question whether that is in fact the case.
the case, yeah,
Um, yeah, and somewhat definitively, like the androids really are no threat to him anyway at any point during the book. And often it's more his philosophical meanderings of him and the J.F. Sebastian character Isidore, that make up the large part of the book. And the actual when he encounters the androids, he usually dispenses with them in a kind of page or two, and then they're no threat to him at any point. Is
yeah.
is, is the other thing I
That
think?
that's quite the shock, isn't it? Like you kind of have
Yeah,
build-ups, and it's like, oh, okay,
yeah,
wow,
yeah. So he'll track them down, and they hide in plain sight. So the androids are really in this thing. They're not trying to they're trying to create lives for themselves so they can sort of insert themselves back into humanity. And
yeah,
so one is an opera singer.
yeah,
And another, the Roy Batty has a wife who's also an android, and there's sort of
yeah,
like you know, so they yeah, so it's that's also a bit different in the way that I mean, quite different in the way that they do that. And yeah, ultimately, Deckard is obsessed. His main driver is to get money so he can buy himself a real life goat. He's got an
Yes.
electric sheep of
Yeah.
the title
Yeah.
of Chekhov's electric sheep. You can't say electric sheep in the title, not have it in the book, I guess. And so he then manages to buy the goat. And spoiler warning: the Rachel character in it, who he sleeps with, even though Deckard also has a wife,
Yeah.
but he chooses not to retire her. She comes back in once he's retired. The other replicants, she comes back and gets revenge on him by throwing his goat off the top of the building and killing his real life goat, which is right at the end of the book. So
It's bleak,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's bleak. It's a bleak book. It's a post-apocalyptic setting, I think, too, which is
Yeah.
really important. So there's a lot of concerns about radiation and where you should be and whether you should be traveling out.
Yeah.
The Isidore character, the J. Sebastian, he doesn't have Methuselah syndrome, which he has in the film. He's been affected by the radiation. So in the book,
Yeah.
he's a kind of type of person they call a chicken head or a special.
Yeah.
So and he's not a genius. He is in fact tied back into this animal thread, which is very strong throughout the book and touched on, but not really strong throughout the film. He drives animals. He picks them up, the defective electronic animals, and he takes them back to get serviced. And he's basically uh, a van driver slash technician, and he's not even good as a technician. Like he's
Yeah.
disliked by the other technicians in the book. Um, so yeah, he's not a genetic genius at 25 who's working alongside Eldon Tyrell as he is in the film. So um, that's yeah, essentially it's sort of the same story, but
Yeah.
it's the way in which it's told and the details that are quite different. By the end of the book, Deckard returns to his wife. He ends up accepting a sort of a toad that he finds as being acceptable replacement for his now goat.
Yeah.
Um, and he returns to a kind of somewhat loveless marriage.
Yeah.
Um, it's
It,
it's weird. They
it,
have this strange things in the book where too that where there's sort of another box. So that you've got the Voigtkamp machine, you've got the
yeah.
Mercer machine it's like almost like a virtual reality machine where you go and experience Mercer's reality in the sort of weird religion that humans follow in it. And then there's this other one where you can tune into emotional states. Um, and it can prescribe them to you. So it prescribes you 6 hours of depression or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, yeah, it's again, it's sort of tied into this idea of post-apocalyptic, what it means to be a human through this framework of empathy. Yeah,
It's it's funny because like when you do describe it, it does kind of you can see where the movie comes out of it. Like you can see
absolutely.
where they've looked through and they've gone, okay, we have this amount of time to make this movie. What can we kind of lose? Well, immediately you lose the wife, and all of that storyline. And are there parts of the book that you wish were uh, used in the movie? Like I kind of like, I wish they'd kind of used the animals if they could have worked
I,
that somehow.
I think so too. I mean, I think ultimately in the book that it lands on the Deckard goes through this question of do the androids have empathy, and Dick resolves it for you. He basically says definitively, no, they don't.
Yeah.
So it's the way that they interact with the animals, like the goat. There's another famous scene in it where they cut the legs off a spider that very in a great amount of detail is quite distressing.
Yeah.
And it's a spider that Isidore keeps. He has a relationship with it, and they don't care. And
Yeah.
when they die in the book, so when Batty's barely in it, when his wife gets killed in front of him, he's like, oh well, he
Yeah.
doesn't have a reaction. It's one of the sort of so that he proposes a thesis at the beginning that they don't have empathy. Deckard explores it, and then he resolves it in the end saying they don't. Whereas I think the animals, and that's why the animals are sort of key to it. But I would have loved to seen the animals in the film a lot more. I mean, it's great that we get the snake and the owl, but
Yeah.
and the snake has such an important role in the film to play in terms of tracking down Zora. But it's such an interesting idea that they've had to sort of create artificial life first and foremost with these animals, and that the real ones are almost preserved and sacred to people, because there's so few of them around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was Blade Runner the first kind of movie that you saw in this genre? Because
Mm,
I obviously went Star Wars and then
yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I remember it was funny because I was for this rewatch, and I haven't watched Blade Runner for a while, and I definitely haven't watched the original with the narration for even longer. And it was in this viewing experience, I tried to kind of put myself back to what it was like to be a kid and hear that music for the first time by Vangelis,
Oh
and
yeah,
also
amazing.
the even the writing, the scroll at the start, and then going straight into that image of the eye and that
Mm,
whole world. And I remember kind of being a little bit freaked out as a kid because
mm,
it was uh, evoking an emotional response that I couldn't relate to.
yeah,
There was something disturbing about it, and it was like, oh my God, doesn't 2019 look terrible?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the dystopianness of it all, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that the characters in it are struggling with this big question around humanity. I think for me too, it's and yeah, I had a similar experience from my first watching of it because again I was quite young, but the replicants are, it lands on this very firmly in the area of like they are people and they
yeah,
have these emotional experiences. Like
yeah,
going in, I thought it was going to be okay. So this is like the way the way he fought all those Nazis and Indiana Jones or
yeah,
stormtroopers. Oh, this is just going to be that, but with these robots.
yeah,
But it doesn't let you off the hook. You have to realize, particularly through Rutger Hauer's absolutely incredible performance, um, the emotional experiences of them, and that he's essentially killing people for
yeah.
you
And he's kind of, I think with lots of great art, the older you get, the more you sort of intuit deeper levels.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, 100%.
I think one of the most fascinating experiences I've had with a movie was, off the back of Star Wars. My grandfather and auntie took me to see 2001, and you know, like what was happening there? I just couldn't get my head around it. I was way
No,
too
you
young for it. My
just
mum,
let it wash over you.
yeah, well, mum at the time was sort of saying this is not going to be the movie for him, and it's like, oh, it's this big sci-fi film, and here's 45 minutes set in the desert with monkeys. Like what's
Yeah,
and then people just having very ordinary conversations.
yeah,
And every time I've kind of gone back to that film, I've found something new to the extent that the last viewing was my favorite viewing.
yeah,
And so with Blade Runner, there is, you kind of go in, you just Harrison Ford's the lead, he's the hero because he's the hero
mm,
of everything. And it wasn't until probably when I was more late teens, I remember watching it and going, he just shot that woman in the back.
yes.
And it's like, oh, I don't, is that what a hero does? I don't think Indiana Jones would shoot a woman in the back. I don't think Han would shoot a woman in the back.
No,
There was just,
he'd shoot Gribbo in the front under the table, but he wouldn't shoot
yeah,
a woman in the back.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He's got a line. He's got,
I mean, in the real version of Star Wars, not this rubbish remake with
no, no.
the new cut.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
just as a little sidebar. After I finished the later season of Andor, I rewatched Rogue One, and then I was like, oh, I haven't watched the original Star Wars trilogy in decades, and I don't think I'd actually seen the addition,
no.
the head moving. If I had, I've put it out of my memory.
Oh,
So it
it's
was like.
terrible. Yeah.
It looks so weird. But then, secondly, I got to the end, and when Han and Luke were getting their medals, I was just sitting here so angry, going, "These fucking guys haven't done anything. They just turned up. These Johnny Come Latelys. Where's
I
Luke?"
know.
Anyway, that's a
Yeah,
podcast,
no, I know the rebellion's been going on for years, and yeah, they
and
turn
these
up
two
and steal the
assholes get
glory.
medals.
Yeah, exactly.
I was furious.
Yes. No.
But yeah, so as I got older, it was like, oh, he shoots one in the back. He then shoots another one while she's doing backflips. And
Yeah.
the two guys, he Like
He doesn't.
Rachel
Yeah,
saves him, and
yeah.
and Roy lets him off the hook.
Yes, yes. I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I had a similar experience. For me, I think it's a great point you make. That it is the kind of film that evolves with you as you go along. So I was expecting, I was all about Harrison Ford the first time I
Mm,
watched it,
mm,
because and then as I've gotten older, Deckard's character I'm still interested by, and I think it's a great performance and it's a fascinating character.
yeah,
But Batty is the character that I'm more drawn to as I get older, because
yeah,
he's
yeah,
dealing with his mortality, and that's
yeah,
that's a very compelling story. Like, he's trying to get more life. He needs more
yeah,
life, depending on which version. It's I want more life, father. I want more life, fucker.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's like that's compelling,
yeah,
and he's basically been a slave, and yeah, and I think that's sort of the story where, yes, again, he's an anti-hero in the same way that Deckard is. They're not heroic. They kill people,
yeah,
um, but you understand, I think, so much more the baddie's motivations, and you have a strong sense of Deckard's. And I think that's, as I've gotten older, that's the story that I'm more drawn to. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's a great film like that.
So maybe we can look at the characters and kind of compare them from book to screenplay. We kind of mentioned that Deckard is married in the book compared to the
Yes.
movie where he's quite clearly a loner. What are there other major differences with his character?
I think there is, and again, it's all very framed through the book, right? So I think one of the key things there is he follows this weird VR religion, Mercerism. And as he goes through, there's a strange subplot where there's one bit where he goes into a police station. It's full of replicants.
Yeah,
Well, Andes or androids in it. So there's a lot more of them on the planet, on Earth, than there are in the film.
yeah,
And then he starts to get el a, elements of a plot by them. And basically, what happens is that they try to undermine this Mercerism, the religion that the humans follow, through a character that is very heavily suggested as a TV character, almost like a cartoon-like character, Buster Friendly.
yeah,
Um, and they try to use Buster Friendly to expose that Mercerism is a sham, and it's a sort of almost like a moon landing type scenario. It's like it's all been filmed on a backlot. I mean, not the moon landing was real,
yeah,
but it's filmed on a backlot somewhere, and he
yeah,
Mercer never really climbed up this mountain and had real rocks thrown at him, and sort of they reveal this, um, and then through Deckard, the we're sort of shown that it's still relevant to humans. It's still how so Deckard has a sort of almost like a vision of Mercerism and Mercer, and realizes that the empathy is important, and that even though it's fake, the way that it leads to a common connection between humans and their appreciation of suffering, again back to the point about this thing being bleak,
yeah,
um, is what gives them empathy.
yeah.
So that's a big difference between the character. Like, he's more based around that. You know, and okay, all the classic stuff. You get to see more of his internal world. So he struggles with killing the androids in it, whereas you don't ever really in the film get a sense that Deckard is struggling, but he is a classic noir hard-boiled archetype. He doesn't say a lot about stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's a key difference there. Um, yeah.
He is on edge in the movie though. Like there is
Yes.
there's something interesting in the performance where um he it's funny because you don't really get any backstory, but you do get a sense that whatever has burnt him out, he is trying to just live a pretty dull and ordinary life.
Yes.
When Rachel turns up and she's just in the elevator with him, he doesn't clock her to begin with, and B, when he gets the realization that she's there, I mean, he's not in charge, is he? He's pretty shaken.
No. Yeah. I think that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think it's partly that's also what we're meant to infer as a viewer, which makes it why I think it's such a classic piece of cinema. Is he's being brought back from retirement, right? So
Yeah.
the things have happened which has made him to retire, and he is sort of resentful of this experience, and because he's quite young too,
Yeah.
it's not like you're going, oh, he's retired because he got too old for the job. you
Yeah.
know f- so he's there are reasons, you know.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, it's almost like he's begrudging it on some levels, but sort of compelled to do it anyway. Yeah, it's a good point you make. Yeah,
Yeah, it's and you know, I know the narration is derided, and Harrison Ford uh, notoriously hated recording it because it
yeah,
wasn't a Ridley Scott suggestion. It was from the uh,
studio. Yeah,
studio. But weirdly, because it's the first one that I ever saw, there's a part of me that quite likes the narration because it weirdly kind of matches the character of being disinterested
it
and
does, doesn't it?
you know, even when he's saying things like, you know, I'm having feelings, and it's like, it doesn't sound like you're having feelings, and that still kind of matches up with your character.
Yeah, it's a good point, really. I think it helps double down on the detective noir aspect of it, right? Like
Yeah,
this, you know, there's those were often first person. If you go back to Chandler and everything, you know, and it had the
yeah.
kind of hard boiled. It's a yeah. There's some of it's abysmally badly written, but I also have a fondness for it. What's the he says sushi? That's what my ex-wife used to call cold fish. My
Yeah.
that's what my ex-wife used to call me. So
Oh man, it's
and
so
imagine in the 80s, that was very like, oh, Japanese culture was very like exciting to everybody. Like,
yeah.
and he's jaded about it. Um, yeah, yeah.
Even and he gets hurt too. Like, you know,
Mm,
like this is a character that as I said, you can feel the aches and the pains in this character and
mm.
uh uh
That fantastic shot where he drinks some of it was vodka or whatever, and you see the blood.
blood. I was just about to say that was one of my
Sorry, yeah.
no, no, don't apologize. It's one of my favorite scenes, and it's just such a small moment.
Beautiful. Mm,
Um, going back over the book as well, and you said this earlier, but I was absolutely gobsmacked at how little Roy there was in the novel, and I wonder, it feels like they must have written more of Roy into the story, but do you think maybe Rutger Hauer's performance elevates it to such an extent that it pops even more?
it's interesting. I think, I mean, obviously there's the speech at the end, right? So, I mean, as everybody knows now, that was how I came up with the final
Mm,
speech, and I think that is how everybody remembers it. But I look at it too, some of those great moments where, um, I think partly I think his performance probably pushed it more into the fore, but I don't think they would have got done it off the fly because Scott being Scott probably would have quite closely followed a lot of the or had plans, you know, for
yeah,
how he. So I think it must have been down to Fancher and David Webb Peoples, Hampton Fancher and David Webb Peoples, who wrote the screenplay, to have been the have realized that there was a hook here. I mean, I
yeah,
think a lot of credit has to go to them, and I think it's often forgotten, although they didn't help themselves down the track. There's a Kurt Russell film called Soldier,
oh, which is set in the same universe, isn't it?
set in the same universe. It was like theoretically the prequel story of what Roy Batty was going through
Right.
before, theoretically, because Francher wrote that.
Yeah,
And it's terrible. It's
yeah,
terrible.
right.
I think it's one of those happy accidents. That's the other thing I find compelling about Blade Runner, right? Like, I guess we'll never know how much Howe's performance lifted him into the film, but the things like him improvising the speech that was never planned for.
Yeah,
So obviously Scott was clearly willing to be flexible. That it was a sort of happy accident and almost didn't come together, and you had these screenwriters who really didn't really do much else beyond in terms of their career path that really drew, accelerated them in terms of the status. But here we have this film that it just all kind of comes together, even though it was incredibly fraught shoot, that
yeah,
there were conflicts between actors. I mean, yeah, I mean, just going back to the Deckard and Rachel stuff. I mean, he and Sean Young famously didn't get along at all,
yeah,
and so that didn't help, and that's why some of even the sort of the romantic love scene between them is very awkward to watch, I think, even
yeah,
nowadays. But
yeah,
at the same time, kind of works because you're asking yourself, well, is she not aware of how to express herself, or yeah. So yeah, I do wonder. I mean, yes, he's Batty is barely in the book, barely in it. He does discover Isidore, and I think that's where I think it was a good thing that they picked up and sort of had this basically the replicants interacting with a human, and the human, in this, and it's in a building that's collapsing. So it's again, so I think they selectively chose a lot of the right things when they, and I think it was a smart move to make more out of Batty and make him this sort of charismatic leader, because he doesn't have any speeches. He's not philosophical in any way. Um, you see so little of him, but in the film, Howard gives that almost like some moments he responds to things as if he's a child, because his emotional state is of a child,
Yeah.
particularly after he kills Tyrell. He's almost like has that impish, almost like toddler-esque expression on his face when he's coming back down in the lift, and and yeah, it,
He is fascinating because you're right. He is philosophical, but he's a child. He's physically, uh, you know, imposing and
mm,
also, but underrated. Quite funny. He's a funny character too. He has a sardonic sense of humor and uses it almost like
yes.
a little bit of a weapon, whether it's terrorizing the character who makes eyes, or even terrorizing Deckard.
Yes. No, it's a good point. And to great effect in the scene where he and Pris win over Sebastian,
Yeah,
um yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes too in the film, when they sort of befriend him
yeah.
essentially. Um
And
he's
Paul
still quite
Sebastian,
yeah.
it's so on edge, like because Deckard, Batty also has that thing that you find in alpha males, which is that they do have a sense of humor, but it's their sense of humor, and
Mm,
it can turn if they kind of misinterpret what you're saying. And there's a couple of times where Paul Sebastian's talking about, I created part of you, and uh, and at first uh, Batty's almost getting ready to be offended by this and possibly kill Sebastian in the moment. And then he kind of realizes, oh no, Sebastian's just, kind of in awe of us. And then he
mm.
kind of relaxes and knows that he can, use that to his betterment later on. But an incredibly nuanced performance in something that has moments that pop to such an extent you can kind of forget about it.
No, I think it's a really great point. Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that's probably too he has an arc, right? So, and he has these journeys. So we don't know, is he a bit dangerous around Sebastian? They befriend him, and then he obviously but uses him,
Yeah,
manipulates him to get access to Tyrell. And so he, even by that point, even though he's befriended me, it's very clear to us that he was manipulating him.
yeah,
But then by the end, so he's still this threat, and clearly he's hunting Deckard, and he's, as you say, he's sort of toying with him, and the howling and the sort of, the hunt, and he's very much that alpha predator in that final sequence. And then to
yeah,
sort of save Deckard shows that he has, in fact, in some ways more than Deckard has, learned compassion,
yeah,
and which then reveals to Deckard something about himself, um, and depending on which version he leaves with Rachel, but there's none of that in the book. There's no emotional journey.
no,
There's he just simply, the androids feign their humanness, and then when they're finally revealed, it's like they drop it like a mask, and they just simply do not have empathy, or in this case, compassion, which is what Batty shows at the end through the real, as much been spoken of. He realizes his own mortality, and the value of a life, and so he saves Deckard rather than lets him die.
yeah.
Yeah.
This viewing was probably the most I've engaged with the Rachel character as well.
Mm,
It's once again, I think as you kind of get older, you suddenly go, oh man, I have real empathy for this character who has been brought up to think one thing and then is
yeah.
kind of thrown all over the place. That's cues fairly closely in the novel, is that right?
In the book, so she doesn't, so it gets a bit confusing. So there's basically two characters that pose as Rachel, right?
Yeah.
One being Pris, who does know that she is and they look identical.
Yes.
So Pris' character knows that she's an android, and then Rachel doesn't. Um, and I guess in the book version, um, her response to that has actually become manipulative and want to protect her and the other androids. And she sleeps with Deckard deliberately to mean that to discourage him from killing her.
Yeah.
So it's they have the realize, but their response to it is somewhat different, I think.
Right.
And again, it's sort of like it's almost like again that veil dropping. The moment that she realizes that she's not a replicant, that she's not a human and that she is an android in
Yeah.
the book, she it's like that's all it takes for her to lose the empathy, the humanness,
Yeah.
of her character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's I think it's a great performance in the film. Like, the way she
Absolutely.
moves, the way she holds herself. Um, it's
Yes.
I think it's an underrated performance.
Absolutely, because you could imagine overplaying her realization that she's not a person and that she's got Tyrell's niece's memories instead of her own memories.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that it's actually her storyline that introduces that strong idea about memory.
Yeah.
Um, and then depending on which version, and we're going to talk about this later, introduces the is Deckard a replicant
Yes.
question because
Yeah.
that's sort of the fake memory thing, and I think too one of those compelling aspects of this of the book is that idea of does memory make you who you are? You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and it's Sean Young's performance in that which she largely underplays. Like there is a vulnerability there, but it's not like she's going full emotional,
No.
tears. It's more she's disillusioned by the
Yeah.
and trying to find a meaning, and she only has Deckard to turn to because other than Tyrell and presumably all the people that you never see in that massive building.
Yeah.
Um, she doesn't know anyone else. So yeah, it's a great performance. It's a great performance.
There's such a one of the little exchanges. It's only brief, but when he calls her and it's such a funny line when he says, I've never had someone walk out on me before, especially when I was being so charming. And he tries to get her down, and she's just like, I don't know that venue. I don't like the idea of that place, and she just kind of hangs up on him. And it's such a small moment, but it always makes me laugh the way it
Yeah,
plays out. You know what, we should talk about the Deckard being the replicant, which I kind of think kind of leads into um, also the different versions of it. Firstly, in the book, he is 100% human.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and there's
He
no
does. No, they're definitive. He does the void camps himself, which you're not able to do for some reason. You can't do it into a mirror or something. I don't know in the film, but yeah, and it says absolutely emphatically. Which, sorry, to my earlier point too about Total Recall is sort of almost like what you would have expected this to be as a classic Philip K. Dick novel, rather than an exploration of empathy, of am I really human question.
yeah,
And I almost feel like that's what the screenwriters might have been expecting to go in. And then they took that as the idea for what they wanted to explore, possibly
yeah,
in the film. Um, yeah. Yeah. Which is more what Total Recall is, so that the remember it for your wholesale is that
yeah.
my memory's real. Um, yeah. He's 100% human.
Yeah. And then when I first saw this version of the movie, we get the happy ending with footage from The Shining that Kubrick lit, which is so strange.
It is
Um,
strange.
and so when I saw the origami unicorn as a kid, and I remember discussing it with my mum, trying to work out, because, all the other origami, like the chicken and the man, they all kind of made sense to me. And the unicorn didn't make sense. And uh, I just kind of came, and I guess it's because of the narration as well. I thought it was uh, the unicorn represented that Rachel was unique and that she was
Mm,
different. And
yeah.
so that's why, oh, she doesn't have a use by date, so they can go off and have a nice relationship kind of thing. Do you remember what your initial
I,
interpretations
I
were?
had you must admit you were much more sophisticated than me, Justin. I had no idea what the unicorn meant. I was just like, oh, it's a unicorn.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
weird. I just thought it was more to sort of actually to just show that Gaff had been there and he'd left her. Like
Right.
he hadn't re killed slash retired Rachel. So it was just more of a he's been and he's decided to let them live.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
And then no, that was a classic little Justin mum conversation on the bus on the way home, trying to work out what was going on there. And then what's the difference between I've seen both, but what's the difference between the director's cut and the final cut?
From memory, um, there's just a bit. So essentially, the director's cut introduces the unicorn scene for the
Yes,
first time, which now suddenly changes everything,
yes,
and a little bit of other stuff takes out the voiceover. That's it.
yeah,
And then the final cut lets some sequences play longer, particularly when the scenes around when he's hunting Zora and he's on the street, and that sequence there,
yeah,
um, and they change. I can't remember which one it is where they change. So when the baddies originally says, "I want more life, fucker," I think it was the final cut where they changed it to "I want more life, father" to push the
yeah,
baddie meeting his creator, religious, sort of symbolism of that.
yeah,
But yeah, it's mostly director's cut that made the critical change.
yeah.
And I think they also tightened up some of the dialogue around how many replicants there were because they said have had the wrong set numbers at various different points in the first one. Is it four? Is it five?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and then the and I that I think also led because I remember back in the day when you'd get magazines and you'd question read articles and things like that. And I think there was a hint that there was this scene that
Mm.
had the unicorn. I'd read about it before I saw it. And then maybe Deckard was one of the
Yeah.
replicants, but that made no sense because everyone knew him on Earth. So, cleaning that up a little bit does help things out.
Yeah. And I think too there was also a scene that was originally planned and parts of was shot that showed the other replicants trying to break into Tyrell Corporation when they get
Right,
fried. So they actually have in the amongst the fans, those characters have names because
right.
they were in a early draft and named, and they shot some of it but chose not to include it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. So do you have a preference for which version you like?
Oh, I mean, as much as I love the janky dialogue, I think it's the director's cut, not the final cut, just because it's still sometimes those director's cuts, which the final cut really
Yeah.
is they fill in stuff that you didn't need there.
Yes.
In Aliens, I don't need the sentry turrets and the fact that actually half of the base is open for alien attack and it's only these sentry turrets keeping them at bay. Didn't
Right.
add anything to the film. I didn't need to see that. I didn't need to see Newt and her family discovering. I'd rather come to so without
Yeah.
talking about aliens, but
Yeah.
I often feel that they're just chucking in extra stuff that they have just as service to the aficionados and lengthening the screen time. Ridley
Yeah.
Scott famously did it with Kingdom of Heaven. He did his director's cut that took already a 2.5 hour film and made it 3.5 hours. I mean, they're not required.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
it's funny. Invariably, you go, oh yeah, that's why you cut that.
yeah, yeah. So for me, director's cut, not final cut, because it introduces the unicorn and that question of is Deckard a replicant? Probably.
Yes, and it's a much stronger ending as well, finishing on the elevator
Oh,
door.
and as much as Kubrick's B-roll not being in it, yes,
Yeah,
the doors close, they go in an elevator. So yeah, the unicorn bit. Sorry, I was referring to. I mean, I'm just assuming everybody knows this film back to front, but
yeah,
Deckard has a dream of a unicorn, and it then suggests that Gaff, who is the other cop who's sort of watching over him in the background, played by Edward James Olmos, knows that he has a dream of a unicorn because he puts a unicorn at the door.
yeah.
Which, to be honest, I also didn't realize had been specifically shot for Blade Runner. I thought that was again more B-roll out of something like Legend,
Oh yeah,
Ridley
right,
Scott's
right.
fantasy film, which again has more unicorns in it.
Yeah, yeah. But it kind of like I know that Harrison Ford always said that he played him as human,
Yes.
and I think that's Ridley Scott's always said that he was definitely a replicant. It's
Yeah.
funny because in once again in the original version, the all the photos that he has, the black and white
Mm.
photos and the piano and all of that kind of stuff, that I just felt like that drew a parallel between he's not that different to Roy
Yes,
and the
exactly.
others. But now it's if he is a replicant, then well, this is all part of the um,
The fake memories.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
creation of the character.
Yeah. And
Um, it
stronger for it, I think, if it has as it brings that memory theme up, in some ways,
yeah,
even further.
and it's interesting that like Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford didn't get along very well making this film, as like they were constantly kind of clashing, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was one of the other than the disagreeing over whether they were Deckard was a replicant or not. But yeah, they as you already mentioned, Ford hated the having to do the voiceover and basically literally just phoned it in. He did
Yeah,
the worst job. In fact, worse. He better still as a story, but he apparently wanted to do a really bad job so they would never use it. So
yeah,
he was trying to just to do the absolute worst he could do in terms of a narration. The studio still used it.
yeah,
Um, and I think there was some disquiet there because Scott still wasn't the Sir Ridley Scott that
yeah,
we know him as now, was trying to get his movie made. So he obviously, as you would, I think, agreed to the studio to allow it to be included. So that was a sort of sense of tension. Um, and also Scott didn't really show it seemed to allegedly show too much concern towards the experience of the actors of being on set. So he was creating and building a world and he had his eye to detail and he wanted to have these scenes play out like this or scenes that they needed and the lighting was going to be like this and because Ridley Graham's drawing famously he's sketching everything. He was an art director for advertising so he knew what he wanted from those scenes and so he would leave them and forward being rained on for
yeah,
hours, and
yeah,
didn't really care for their comfort or the amount of time they were spending on set. Um, and Ford was the big name in the film, but still obviously wasn't. We couldn't. I don't think back then, even we're talking what 82. They could have make demands in the way that actors can nowadays.
yeah.
So Ford didn't like that aspect of it. Um, and then yeah, apparently also the other one that I've come across is that Scott disparaged the American crew
Yes,
because he preferred working with English crews and felt the Americans weren't, and Ford took offense on behalf of the crew.
yeah,
So it largely makes him sound like a bit of a jerk.
yeah,
Not Ford, Scott,
yeah,
for the most part. But then Ford also didn't get along with Sean Young either. So I don't think maybe it wasn't all Scott's issues there because Sean Young was essentially an ingenue at this point. It was with this only a second major film, and
yeah,
she was still very young coming into it. So I can't imagine she brought bad behavior, although she later on got tired with that.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it was pretty fraught, and it was like it was quite a shock when you discovered that Ford was happy to come back for the sequel.
Yeah, well, and to the point about is he a replicant? It's almost like we have to rely on Denis Villeneuve to give the most adult response to that question, which he says, "Well, isn't that the charm of the film? We don't know. That's what
Yeah,
makes it so compelling as a film.
yeah,
It's better not to have a definitive answer, and therefore we come back to it seeking that answer rather than Scott saying he is and Ford saying he isn't, a
yeah,
replicant." Yeah, it was interesting that he came back. Yeah, apparently they've also since buried the hatchet and gotten
yeah,
along and have moved forwards in their relationship. Because I know certainly for the press tour for 2049, Ford was asked some of those or probed around that, and he was it's all fine now, but,
yeah.
sort of thing.
You
Yeah.
know, enough time passes, and then you suddenly realize that you've kind of made one of the most important science fiction movies of all time.
Yes.
Uh,
An interesting 2049 gave Sean Young an opportunity for sort of almost a sort of redemption story because even though she wasn't in it, but they used her image, they'd obviously sought permission from her to do that, and
yeah,
she gave them her blessing and was keen for that to happen. So it
yeah.
sort of closed it out.
I quite like the sequel, and but I think one of the mistakes that they made with the sequel was not necessarily anything to do with the story, but I just wouldn't have had like I understand that you had to have Harrison Ford in the press tour
Mm,
to sell this film, but on the flip side, if I didn't know he was in the film and
mm,
but wondered if he was going to turn up, and then when he first turns up, I think
mm.
it like a movie like Seven now would have had Kevin Spacey on the tour.
Oh, and they would have had a box
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah,
Kevin,
but a
you
box
know,
of popcorn.
box with the yeah, with the prop. Should be showing you that. Spider, come see Gwyneth Paltrow's head in a box. It'd be
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah.
No.
But I would have loved to have been sitting there the first time I watched it and gone, "Oh, he's in it."
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really good point. It would have been a nice surprise. I mean, for all the reasons you give, it makes complete logical sense that they wouldn't put somebody like Ford in it and not want to talk about it. Because it does suspend that question essentially that becomes a gripping part of the story. Is Deckard part of this now? Will
Yeah.
Kay come across Deckard? But it's a foregone conclusion. You're just watching the time going, what with an hour and 45, we still haven't seen Harrison Ford. What
I know
gives?
it's really strange. Like it gives it a different viewing experience. I kind of the first time I saw it, I was a little bit underwhelmed. I didn't dislike it, but I was a bit underwhelmed. And then once I kind of had my head around it, the second time I watched it, I was like, oh well, I can just kind of sit in it and
Yeah,
and enjoy it from that perspective.
yeah. I think that the part of the performance choices of Ford in the original, and then the ambiguity and tension around the relationship with him and Rachel doesn't. It's sort of like the 2049 tries to answer that question and say they were in love, they had a child, etc.
Yeah,
Spoilers again, but the that aspect of it, I think you've got a big gap there. So you're having to do a lot of heavy lifting as a viewer if you know the original film to sort of get on board with that idea and sort of go,
yeah,
okay, we're going to have to fill in the blanks. We're going to have to suspend our disbelief that this in the gap between films, there's evidence of this relationship flourishing,
yeah,
to the point that he's motivated enough by the ending. But I also think that, yeah, again, not talking too much about 2049, but when when the new replicant version of Rachel is killed in front of him, I would have had more. I would have thought he would have had much more of a visceral reaction. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Plus, this is me problematizing it now, but she's the essentially the air quotes here 20-year-old
yeah,
unaged version of Rachel.
yeah,
And we never answer this question of whether these replicants age. Presumably they do,
yeah,
maybe. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So he's looking at the much, much younger version to the woman that he had to bury who died in the
yeah,
film. Again, it's a bit of a, for me, a little bit of an incongruity there.
yeah.
But, you know, still, just such a visually and who would have ever thought we got would get a sequel to Blade Runner? So,
And it feels correct that the sequel should be as flawed as the original in
oh,
its
yeah,
own way. You know, it'd feel weird to have a perfect sequel and then
yeah.
ah, well, that doesn't quite fit in with the ethos of this film with its
And then
seven.
leaving us unanswered questions about this replicant revolution and underground that's just introduced, and now we never find out what
And
happened
now
to
we'll never
that.
find out. Yeah, I think there's a TV series coming out.
Oh,
Uh,
is there? Okay,
yeah,
there we go.
I know. I don't know who's doing it. I know Noah Hawley is Alien Earth starts in August, and after what Hawley did with the Fargo series,
Okay.
I'm pretty optimistic about what he'll do.
Optimistic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Fargo. Like it's even the worst series of Fargo was still incredibly watchable for me.
I
So
love the first one. I've done myself a disservice by not watching the second, because I understand that's also the peak. Is that considered to be?
yeah, I think people kind of like the second one the best. I thought the last season, the fifth season, was pretty
Okay, there you
compelling.
go.
And but I like season three and I like season four as well.
Okay, on the
Uh,
list.
but they're there for you at some point in the future whenever you have time to
Well, yeah.
delve in.
Well, fingers crossed then, because as a sort of taking as the film and translating and still doing its own thing, it did that series was particularly the first one did a
Yeah,
great job
yeah.
bridging between film and TV show.
So maybe we'll get the replicant revolution or whatever in the TV series, but who knows where that's going to go? It'll be
Fingers crossed.
interesting. I will finish off with this. So, where do you rank Blade Runner in? I won't say rank it in one, two, three, or whatever, but in your tier of movies that you love, where would it rank?
Oh, top three. I
Yeah,
mean, but it has a very special place for me, and I'm particularly drawn to sort of science fiction cinema as well. Anyway, but I think it's for me, if we're just talking science fiction cinema, and it's well deserved of the title of the greatest science fiction film, and it's just partly because of the ambitiousness of it and the way that something from 1982 you can sit down and watch it now in 2025, and it still holds up.
yeah,
Effect. It's not, none of the effects are cringe. None of it makes you go, oh, that was a bit rough.
yeah,
Such a illogically ended up being this masterpiece, despite all the flaws along the way. I don't think it's a perfect film,
no,
but for its overwhelming, just a philosophical, emotional resonance that it has as a film, while still being just visually as breathtaking, and the performances. I think, yeah, for me, number one science fiction, top three of all time.
yeah. Perfection is the enemy of good, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so I think you can love something regardless of the flaws. You're going to be coming back on this podcast soon to talk about your new novel. Can you let us know? Can you give us a synopsis on when it's going to be released?
So yeah, so it's called The Moscow Defector. It comes out on the 29th of July, and essentially it tells the story of the Berlin blockade, which took place in Berlin, at the end of the Second World War, where the Soviets tried to stop Berlin being supplied by the Allies. And with that background, our protagonist August Deschênes is having to track down people who are trying to sabotage the blockade, so allow them to sort of fly planes in and out of Berlin. And it tells his story whilst also exploring the story of his wife, who is for various different reasons has been caught up with the Soviets, and
Yeah,
her experience. So we sort of see that story of the Berlin blockade from two sides,
yeah,
and
great.
it's an espionage thriller essentially. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, the last two were fantastic and real uh, cinematic moments, especially running around, the uh, bombed out cities
yes,
and the attitudes and I think in the first one is towards the end there's the tank rolling through the
Paris, yes, yeah.
yeah oh,
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to set something in those settings, you really want to make them live for people. I think is the goal. So thanks.
yeah. And where can people find you online?
It's Alex Hammond Author at Instagram. That's my thing, or alexhammondauthor.com. And yeah, and the book is all over the web at the moment. If you search the Moscow Defector or AW Hammond, which is my name for publishing, you can pre-order it now.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, I look forward to having you back on to discuss the book once I've ripped into it.
Looking forward to it, Justin. Thank you.
Cheers. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. The plan is to try and have more guests in the next few months. I've missed having guests. It's just been crazy time. Like, it's look out the window. Everything is full on at the moment. And I just read that the Stephen Colbert Late Show is coming to an end next year. And that is, when a late show is being given the cut and they're not going to replace it. And here in Australia, we've had the project let go. That show was not for me, but it did employ a lot of people that I know. And so I was very sad to see it go from that perspective. So everyone's kind of scattered, everyone's flat out, and we're all doing our best but I will try to bring in more guests, and we'll try to bring back Space Podyssey a little bit more because it's one of my favorite segments. And we've got to get Ben back. That's my main goal. Actually, as soon as I finish recording this, I'm going to give him a call. I'll be back next week with the podcast, as I said earlier. If you would like to see some a stand-up show that I filmed earlier this year, you can find that over at Patreon. Otherwise, please find me probably on Instagram. I think that's where you can find me the most. Justin Hamilton Comedian. You can find me at Blue Sky and Threads, a little bit at Facebook, but mainly over at Instagram. And there'll be a Substack coming soon. So I will. You can go and find that now, Justin Hamilton Comedian at Substack. I'm building that at the moment. That'll be for those of you who are more interested in the writing side of things. So many things going on, so many things happening. But there you go. It's 2025. That's the world that we live in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a friend of the show and therefore a friend of mine. And I'll look forward to chatting to you again next week. Until then.